Cleaning up water damage sucks. I am coverkillernation, maker of floods with the words that I speak, but cleaner of floods whenever Mother Nature, I guess, does the speaking. I don't know. Some sort of weird metaphor there. We're here to talk about another album. This is an album that came out about a week or so ago, and it's one that a lot of people wanted me to talk about, and a lot of people have been predicting whenever I have posted on the coverkillernation fan page on Facebook, what album am I reviewing next. This has been one that has been coming up a lot, so it's time for me to finally render these people correct. And that is the new album from Asphyx, which is going to be DEATHHAMMER. And this album reminds me a lot of a couple of other bands, and that will become a little bit more prominent a little bit later on in this review. But for those of you who don't know who Asphyx are, they are a Dutch band that has specialized in a really nice little hybrid of doom and death metal with a little bit of a thrash influence there as well. And one of the best ways that I can describe DEATHHAMMER is expect and think about Celtic Frost's Monotheist, only with a little bit more in the way of speed and pacing, and the vocals are a lot more rough. So if you have that mental image in your head, then you kind of understand what you're kind of going to expect with from DEATHHAMMER. And I really enjoyed the fact that I was able to draw this conclusion and then found out, instead of vice versa, that they did a Celtic Frost cover-off of Monotheist as part of the bonus tracks on this record, which was Asphyx. And that's one of my favorite tracks off of Monotheist, but then again, that album's just spellbinding, so to have just one favorite track is almost an insult to the record. So it was really cool that that little comparison kind of happened, that little piece of fate sort of happened, so the comparison makes sense all the more. The second band that they remind me of a little bit, and it's not a complete comparison because this band is a little bit more in the black metal vein, but still has a little bit of that like thrashy element that you know, kind of twinges in, even though that's not their principal style. And that's another A name, and that's Absu. And I really enjoy the fact that I hear like little twinges of that in there as well. But this is their, you know, Asphyx is their own band. They have been doing this for quite some time. In fact, they've been around since the 1980s, and this is an album that's able to combine all of the best elements of their discography and kind of put a nice 2012 spin on it, or in this case 2011, considering that's whenever it was recorded. But I like the flow of this album. I enjoyed the fact that these songs seem to flow right into one another, and not so much that they had a very large story to tell or anything like that, but it just something where the music all makes sense sequentially, so to speak. Whereas there are some albums by some artists that seem doomed to just try to oversaturate their album with a lot of different ideas and a lot of different elements, kind of taking on and assuming many hats. This is a band that is very focused on making sure that their album flows from start to finish and makes a lot of musical sense. So that's something that this album, DEATHHAMMER, does exceptionally well. Also, it does something that I enjoy a lot and that I harp on a lot with bands. It really does boost the variety, not only from track to track, but also within the track. And that's something that I find to be very quintessential into making a really stellar album. You have to have enough variety on your album in order for it to be interesting, in order for it to really captivate an audience, and also just to kind of bring in multiple styles of metalheads or multiple styles of music fans. Because if you really stick to one style, you're almost alienating a large crop that perhaps doesn't enjoy that style. But if you're able to include elements from other sides and kind of cross over a little bit, you also have the crossover fan effect that will perhaps like your album, even though they're not the biggest death metal fan or not the biggest doom metal fan. The doom side on this album is not something that's nearly as prominent, but whenever it is, that's where the Celtic Frost feelings really start to resonate a lot with me, because it reminds me a lot of the atmosphere, of that dank, of that down in a hole style feel that Monotheist really gave you, where, you know, you were really in a dark place thinking evil thoughts, and you're just one step away from conjuring a demon and taking over the world. I mean, Monotheist really puts you in a dark state of mind whenever you listen to that record, and this is an album, DEATHHAMMER, that really conjures up that image and reminds you of it very, very nicely. And so that comparison is well justified in many different ways. This is an album that really took me by surprise. This is an album that I've heard a lot of acclaim for, and you know, this is a band that sort of came out of nowhere here early in 2012 to really capture the flag, I guess, so to speak. And this album didn't disappoint whatsoever. Besides the great atmosphere and besides the awesome comparisons to other bands, this is just a very solid work. You know, this is one that really is going to keep you guessing, it keeps you thinking, but at the same time it also keeps you headbanging. And whenever you have an album that does that, whenever you have an album that engages a listener that much, you have a solid affair. You have something that's going to be not only good for the short term whenever they listen to it, but also it's something that they're going to remember in the long term and think about later on down the line, whenever maybe they're assembling a list, or whenever they're just thinking to themselves, man, I really want to listen to that Asphyx record again. I give this album a solid 8.5 out of 10, which for some people might seem a little high. But this is an album that captivated me. It's one that certainly took me on a ride that I won't forget. And this is an album that I've already revisited countless times ever since I was able to get it. So that's something where I've really wanted to listen to this record. And a big thing of it was I wanted to make sure that this wasn't something that was just, I listened to it once and it was glorious and I was just in lust with it. No, this is an album I'm in love with. I really enjoy this. I think you guys will too. Check it out. Let me know. Do you like this album? Do you hate this album? Do you think it's just kind of average? And why? Coverkillernation out.